What is going on, YouTube people? New York Cards and Comics here. Today, we are joined by Paul Lesko, the hobby lawyer, to discuss the Fanatics and Panini case. About a 25 to 30 minutes chit chat with Paul, where he gives a brief overview, and then what we spent the bulk of it on was kind of talking about the what ifs and what could potentially happen here and what that all might look like. So, Paul is absolute wonderful follow on Twitter. I highly recommend checking him out over at Paul_Lesko for all things hobby legal related. Great resource. Has put out a ton of great information over the years on hobby legal happenings. So, without further ado, let's go ahead and dive in to our conversation with Mr. Paul Lesko. All right. Today I have the pleasure of Paul Lesko, the hobby lawyer, joining me on the stream. First time on the channel, but we have met in person. I got to sign the legendary jersey at the
Nice.
Cleveland National last year. So welcome to the channel, Paul. Good to finally have a formal conversation with you.
No, Phil, thanks for having me on. And I will have another jersey this year. So hopefully you're going to the National in Chicago, and hopefully I'll get your autograph then too.
How many signatures do you usually get each year?
Oh, it's a lot. You know what? I should go back and count, but it's really all I do at the National. I don't actually buy cards or look for anything there. I'm just there to meet people, talk to people, and get their autographs. And I was there, I think, 2 days, 2.5 days last time, and that's all I did. I don't think I left with anything from this National that I bought.
Well, the reason we have you on today is we got some exciting news the other day in the Panini Fanatics Antitrust case, kind of out of nowhere. Which I guess that's kind of how these things happen. Is you're just kind of sitting around one day and you're like, oh wait, there's an update in this thing. So I guess let's kind of start with this. Can you just kind of give us, I kind of briefly covered it in reading through your tweet thread the other day, but can you kind of just give us a high level overview of kind of what happened the other day?
Sure. So there is multiple lawsuits between Panini and Fanatics, and it initially started with Panini suing Fanatics and a bunch of Panini's former employees because Fanatics took about 34 employees from Panini, and that's kind of what started everything. Panini alleged that the tactics that they used were improper to get the employees to go there, and they violated all types of agreements, and so that's kind of like the first lawsuit that happened. But then we get to the lawsuits that matter here because then Panini brought an antitrust lawsuit against Fanatics, alleging that they're an unlawful monopoly. A couple days after that, Fanatics sued Panini and alleged that, hey, first of all, we were negotiating a deal where we wanted to buy your licenses, your exclusive licenses, so we could come out with product earlier. And you made up numbers. This whole deal was going to be based off of your sales numbers, and you made up numbers and you engaged in bad faith negotiations with us. And also, you have, we're alleging that you've threatened your employees that if they try to go work for us, you'll sue them. And that's an unlawful restraint of your employees being able to come to work for us. So they brought a lawsuit on that. So this is about 2 years ago. And both of these lawsuits ended up in front of the same judge, the antitrust lawsuit and Fanatics countersuit. Both sides moved to dismiss the case, as basically happens in every case. And then we waited for months and months and months. Practice of law, it really is a hurry up and wait. You have 3 weeks to meet a deadline, and then the judge will rule in 9 months. That's really how it is, and you never know when the judge is going to rule. But in the judge's ruling, starting with the Panini antitrust case, and there's other things there. There's a tortious interference claims and other things, but the antitrust is the important cases there. The judge is allowing most of the antitrust case against Fanatics to go forward. And for Fanatics' countersuit against Panini, the judge took out the negotiations claims, but kept in the claims about the Panini interfering with employees potentially going to Fanatics. So it was over 50 pages of orders. It's antitrust, tortious interference, it's unfair competition, it's all these complex issues that are there. But the ultimate take home is these cases can now begin. Antitrust cases are notoriously long, they take years to do, and they are very expensive. And it requires a lot of documents going back and forth. So the big take home is these cases are about to start. They're about to get very expensive, and both sides are going to be sharing documents with the other side that they'd rather not share because antitrust cases are looking really at your licensees, your licenses, what you're paying people, what your revenue is. I mean, it's all the deep secrets of both of these companies are about to go back and forth, and their lawyers are going to look all this over and make their cases out of it.
So the only winners here are the lawyers and the content creators, basically.
At least at this point, I joked yesterday that I'm like, there's a bunch of hourly attorneys involved in this case that are measuring for a bigger pool in their backyard at this point because antitrust cases are 2 to 3 years really, and I've been involved in a couple antitrust cases and they were 2 to 3 year long cases. So if you're a billable hour attorney, it's the best thing in the world. If you're an expert, it's great. If you're the client writing the checks, however, not as enjoyable.
So, obviously the decision this week kind of cleared the path for this to kind of take the step forward. What do these cases usually actually complete out, or do in most cases big business like this battling between each other, do they usually end in settlements? Like, how do these typically play out? I know every scenario could be a little bit different, but just kind of like on a macro level.
Most of these cases they do end in settlement, and there's three moments where you have to like check the case. The first time when you check to see how everybody's doing is after the motion to dismiss. It's after like right now. Today both sides are assessing their cases and saying, hey, is this worth going forward? Did we get beaten up? Did we win? And I think right now, while Panini definitely enjoyed yesterday better, it wasn't a slam dunk win for them. The judge says, hey, if you prove everything that you have in your complaint, and if Fanatics defenses don't work, well, then Panini, you have a chance of winning. So I think right now, Panini's attorneys and Panini itself are probably looking at this case and thinking, hey, we're pretty good. Why would we want to settle this? Let's go forward with it. Had both sides gotten beaten up a little bit more, then maybe it would be a better time for them to settle. But I think the next big time for potential settlement is after it's at what's called summary judgment, when both sides say, hey, look, all the evidence is on our side. This should not go to a jury. And we were probably 12 months to 18 months away from the parties filing their summary judgment motions and getting an order on that. So if the case doesn't settle over the next couple weeks or a couple months, I don't expect it to settle for at least over a year from this point. And then the final time before a case might settle is on the courthouse steps. That's when everybody gets nervous. So that's the last time you look at see if a case will settle.
So essentially, the next steps now are there's going to be a lot of documents trading hands and people kind of getting their ducks in a row over the course of the next year to year and a half, is essentially the next kind of battleground, if you will.
Yep, with depositions, and then a little bit after that, the experts will get involved. You'll get some, each side will get a couple of economists involved. You'll get some damages experts. Both sides will say their cases are worth $1 billion, and the other side's case is worth $3. It's a lot involved here.
So in the meantime, though, business basically just continues as normal, correct? Because like Panini loses the NBA license this fall and the football license next spring, and then Fanatics is going to have, quote unquote, an exclusive license starting in the next 6 months to a year, depending on the sport. How do you, depending on how this ends up going, you really can't put the toothpaste back into the tube, can you? like
No, I don't think anybody's going to modify their business practices because of this ruling. I think Fanatics is going to continue creating the products that it's creating. I think Panini's going to keep creating its products for the exclusive licenses as long as it can before those licenses run out. And then the litigation will go on at the same time. And it's not until somebody wins this case that their behavior may be curtailed.
So that's kind of where I want to go next. Is so the most likely outcomes here are settlement, Panini wins, Fanatics wins. Is there a fourth option that I'm just not aware of that could potentially, could they both, I guess they could both win pieces and parts, correct? There probably is some middle ground that I'm not seeing.
And that is also an option too, since they both have countersuits. There is the option where both sides, depending on, I think Panini's case right now is much larger. An antitrust
Mhm.
case is the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. It's much larger than this employee case that Fanatics is going forward with. But there is a world where both sides could win $50,000. Then it's a wash. So either that way you can look at it, both sides win or both sides lose. But yeah, the most likely results for all litigation is settlement. Uh, Most cases settle. 95% of cases settle. If it doesn't, well, then it's at the motion or the summary judgment phase, somebody may win, or most likely at trial, somebody will win.
Now, say they settle, say whether it's Fanatics purchasing Panini or just writing them a check to say, go away, please. Panini's kind of laid the groundwork to say that there's kind of a case here. So even if Panini went away, could insert other company here be like, well, Panini kind of had a leg to stand on here with these exclusive licenses. Could like someone pick up the torch and come at them again?
That's always a risk when it comes to litigation, especially litigation like antitrust. Part of the analysis for an antitrust, and the judge walked through it, is would Panini make a good plaintiff? Does Panini represent other people well here? Indicating there are, as this case is written, there are potentially other companies out there that have been hurt. So yeah, it's that is a risk that Fanatics might have. However, they'll ultimately come back and say, yeah, if this case settled and settled confidentially, well, look, we disposed of it. There are no problems. We would have won that case anyway. You get to start all over and try this again. And I don't think very many companies have the deep pockets that Panini has.
To go to war. Yeah, that makes sense. So we have settlement over here. That would obviously probably look like, you know, Fanatics basically cutting a check in some way, shape, or form to either purchase or make Panini go away. The Fanatics win if they win in a relatively clear cut. Kind of seems like it would just be business would continue as usual, correct? If
Correct.
Panini or if Fanatics comes out as the victor, it would be like, oh, okay, Panini, you lost. Fanatics keep doing your exclusive licenses. You're all good. So it would essentially be business as usual, correct?
Yeah, not only that, but it vindicates Fanatics' business plan. It's like, hey, the next person that comes around, you can also get a 35-year license or a 25-year license. It pretty much it will a Fanatics win will pretty much define the hobby for the rest of our lives. If Panini wins, however, uh,
Yeah, that's where things get interesting. So that's where I
yeah,
wanted to go next.
yeah,
So a Panini victory, and I'm sure that there's probably varying degrees of Panini victory here, but kind of, and I know we're getting into very what if territory, so we won't hold you to anything. But what does, or I guess, what are the ripple effects of a potential Panini win in this?
yeah, and that's what to try and gauge where we go. You have to look at the complaint and see what is Panini asking for. And of course, the number one thing, they're asking for money. They're asking for a lot of money. That's here. They've been hurt. They've lost sales. The competition's been hurt. They need a lot of money to make up for that. But they're also asking for some other things. They're asking that the exclusive licenses be blown up. They're asking for Fanatics to actually disgorge tops. They're asking for Fanatics to actually disgorge GCP, which is the manufacturing facility that Fanatics has an ownership interest in. So any one of those things, all of those things, or none of those things could be a potential outcome. Now, when it comes to antitrust, well, when it comes to normal cases, it's normally just dollars and it's just money. That's all you get. But when you get in antitrust, sometimes the courts try to curb the behavior too. So I'd say if there is a Panini win, the most likely thing to look at would be the exclusive licenses. I think disgorging tops, while interesting sounding, probably isn't realistic. I don't think we've had too many antitrust cases getting companies disgorged since AT&T and Ma Bell and stuff way back when. And I don't think you're going to have them, have to say that they have to lose their ownership interest in a manufacturer. But I think the main thing to look at is, an exchange of money and maybe some of the exclusive licenses, which is like, I think the most interesting thing here because Panini isn't, just a small company. They've had exclusive licenses too. So this case kind of begs the question of how many licenses is too much? Because for Panini to go forward with this case, it's got to be saying, okay, you could have some amount of exclusive licenses. What is that number? Is it three? Is it four? Well, what is it? So you get always a little bit worried about what's going to happen with that. And and I was thinking about this morning that remember part of Fanatics' lawsuit against Panini is based off of uh, their negotiations that broke down. Panini was offering Fanatics two more exclusive licenses. apparently it was okay with that. There's a dollar value there.
Mhm.
So if you add up, okay, if Fanatics at that point had the MLB exclusive license and the MLBPA exclusive license, and it got two more exclusive licenses, is four okay? So is five bad? I mean, it's just it's really fun from the lawyer perspective because it's ultimately it's a giant chess game because there's so many pieces that are here. So, but that's that's what I found fascinating is it's the answer the real answer to the question of this case will be how many exclusive licenses is too many if having too many exclusive licenses is actually a problem.
Yeah, and that is really kind of the crazy part of it because, like you said, Panini had Panini had NFL, NBA, and I don't know when they all overlap. They had NASCAR at some points in time, which I think they still do. They had WWE at some point in time. They had UFC at various points in time, and they had some of those all simultaneously. Like I said, I don't know the timelines on each individual one. So, like, even if the court comes out and says, "Okay, bad Fanatics, you can't have exclusive licenses anymore," that doesn't mean. I mean, or the leagues aren't involved in this case, right? So, like, what's their they don't necessarily have to do whatever the court said. Like, they don't have to give Panini a license if they can't come to an agreement, correct? Like, it's not like, no, MLB, you have to work with another company or this specific company. It's just saying, Fanatics, you can't have an exclusive license. That doesn't mean the leagues have to do a license with someone else. It just means they have to be able to.
Yeah, and that was one of the arguments that Fanatics made is that part of this exclusive license argument doesn't actually make sense for Panini as a plaintiff because the leagues and the players associations they are not parties to this lawsuit. They are not defendants. They are not plaintiffs. They are not in court. I mean, I'm sure there'll be subpoenas that are sent to them and they'll ask for testimony and documents, but they're still not parties in the court. So the judge can't tell them what to do. So the judge, yes, could blow up an exclusive license or multiple exclusive licenses, but that doesn't mean that the leagues or the players' organizations then have to go back and say, okay, Panini, here we go, we'll have a license with you. They can just as easily turn around and give non-exclusive licenses to other people or exclusive licenses to other people that or other companies that are out there. So it's I mean, it's just the possibilities, and that's why this case is just so fun to speculate about because there's just so many possibilities here. Two licenses could, maybe Fanatics has to lose an exclusive license, or maybe two of them, and then maybe they go to Leaf, or maybe they go to Wildcard, or maybe Panini gets one, or maybe everybody gets non-exclusives. I think that's what a lot of people are hoping that this case will say you can't have any exclusives in the hobby. I do not think that's likely at all because IP owners are allowed to do whatever they want to do. So I think everybody's dream of going back to 1986 when we had four or five different manufacturers all with licensed products, I don't think that's likely to happen. But you never know. You never know what's going to happen here.
Yeah, depending on I guess the judge and the jury could send it in a bunch of different directions that are very unexpected if it ever gets that far.
Yeah,
So you most likely you think this thing probably does not actually get to a judge is sitting there laying down an order. This probably settles, or do you think that we actually see this thing play all the way out?
I at this point, I'm just playing the odds. Most cases settle. I think this case will ultimately end up settling. It might be a year, 18 months from now. It could be 2 years from now. But ultimately, I do think the case does settle. If it ends up in court, it will be, if it ends up in front of a jury at trial, it will be the single most important trial ever in the history of trading cards. So I will book a ticket and I will be there for all 4 or 5 weeks that this case is going on.
Be live tweeting from the aisles.
Yep.
If it went settlement route, is that simply like Fanatics cuts a check, or could there be Fanatics acquires licenses from Panini or parts of Panini, or just be would that be almost a separate business deal and it would just be like, here's a briefcase of money, leave us alone,
Yeah.
and then figure out, okay, we want to acquire the Prism brand from you. That would be its own separate thing.
Yeah, most times when it comes to settlements, the easiest thing for business people to do is to just cut a check. It's very difficult to continue to do business with somebody that you had just been sued by,
Mm.
and you're continuing to do business with them. They're, you normally don't have very good feelings towards that other side. Um, I mean, Fanatics did already want to buy the licenses from Panini. I don't know if there were discussions of actually Fanatics buying Panini, because right now Fanatics those licenses are going to go to Fanatics before this case ends up. So it doesn't make sense for Fanatics to buy the licenses from Panini. Yes, Panini's got some great IP. Is that something Fanatics is interested in? They've got a lot of IP already. Do they need more?
Yeah,
So I think I do think the most likely result here is if there is a settlement, it's a exchange of money.
go away, Panini. Here's a briefcase.
Yeah, here's a tanker truck.
Yeah, I can't even imagine how you would calculate what that would look like. I'm sure it's probably in a document somewhere. Someone will bill a lot of hours to sit down and probably negotiate
it,
that out.
it'll have a B in the billions. There's no doubt in my mind. This case, it's no doubt in my mind. Panini's expert will say this case is worth over $1 billion.
That's a that is an insane sum of money.
Yeah,
There was so part of the thing that got thrown out. You had mentioned about the Fanatics potentially trying to buy Panini, and like Fanatics was claiming that Panini was brought basically bad numbers to the table. That got thrown out. Was that part of the one that got thrown out?
it is. It is. Yep.
So that was I don't is that basically saying that like no Panini actually did bring good numbers to the table, or like how can we read something into that?
It's difficult to read what's in that. It was just basically that Fanatics can't bring a lawsuit for failure to negotiate in good faith. That's really what's there. It's just it's not alleged properly. So, maybe discovery something gets turned up for it, but right now I think it's out of the case. Yeah, I don't. You can't read into here that Panini. This is not the courts rubber stamping and saying Panini negotiated in good faith. It's just
Gotcha.
that Fanatics cannot bring a lawsuit against them saying they did not negotiate in good faith.
Gotcha. So from a standpoint of facts, we can kind of wrap up on this. We'll keep this short. I don't want to take up too much of your time. What does their defense slash offense look like here? Like they essentially have to say that I'm going to use the monopoly is almost okay here. Like it's a benefit. How do they potentially frame something like that? Is it just, hey, we're so in bed with the leagues through all these other things, and it just makes everybody way more money? Like how do they even go about something like that?
Yeah. So this is where, and I think this is the most important part of the order yesterday, where the judge said, she said that Panini, if you prove all your facts, well, then it looks like there is a unlawful monopoly here. However, Fanatics gets its chance to say that the actions that it's took actually have a pro-competitive effect, meaning it's good for the market, it's good for competition, it's good for the consumers. And we've seen a little bit of Fanatics tipping their cards actually when they're explaining what's going on here by saying, "Hey, the what actually happened here is the licensees, yeah, Panini was around, they're the big dog, they had all these exclusive licenses, but then they got complacent. Redemptions went through the roof. Quality control was awful. There were all these issues that are out there. If Fanatics can come in and say, hey, we came in, we fixed all these problems. Well, first of all, they have to prove that these problems actually happened. And then they say, and then we fixed all these problems. And look, by the way, prices are down and competition is up and people satisfaction is better and there's more people doing this and this and this. So there is an opportunity to, because you need to have, and to basically win in an antitrust case, you have to show the other side has a monopoly, but it has to be an unlawful monopoly, meaning they did something bad. If Fanatics is just a big monopoly, but is doing all good for everybody, then Panini's case can blow up. And that's a horrible way to summarize it, but that's basically it. You need to have a monopoly and bad, but just a monopoly and not being bad, well, then Fanatics can win that case.
Interesting. But
It's a little more than
the
not just
comment
bad.
section is going to love the good
It,
versus bad
yeah,
monopoly.
and just to go back, it's they can't be not bad. They have to show pro competitive effects, so they have to be good. So
Yeah,
so to make everybody really confused,
yeah.
can't be anti illegal monopoly. You can be a monopoly, but they have to be good for competition. That's the analysis.
That just sounds like the most nonsense. That sounds like the most lawyer statement ever. You could be a monopoly, but you have to be a good monopoly. Seems like the most. Like,
Exactly. Yeah.
how does that
Yeah.
even happen?
And I'm sure it's a reasonableness standard too, which every $2,000 an hour attorney on this case will say my client's the most reasonable one here.
Yeah, I mean, you could like you said, you could kind of see the argument of like, well, look how many redemptions we have compared to them. Because we're in bed with the leagues and we have that exclusive agreement, we were able to do the MLB debut pack and we get
Exactly.
access to these things that why didn't Panini do this when they had this advantage? Look at the things that we've done that they haven't with the same because we have an exclusive deal. We're able to do X, Y, and Z thing.
Yep.
We can have the player follow them back on social media, all the little kind of things that they do.
Yeah, we've got
You
these
can
great
kind of see,
commercials that nobody's seen in a long time.
yeah, absolutely, absolutely. All right, Paul. For anyone that hasn't, go check out Paul Lesko over on the Twitter/X machine at Paul_Lesko. You can see it on the screen there. He gives great updates on this and many, many other, basically anything, almost even collectible. You've kind of gone outside. You've dabbled in comic books over the recent years. You've gotten in the autograph memorabilia, all sorts of nonsense.
Yeah, anything that's collectible, I try to get into. I think I even got a painting case I'm looking at right now too. So,
All right, Paul. Thanks again for the time. We look forward to your updates in this case and many, many others in the future.
no, thanks for having me on.